That's right. Welcome in. It is the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, presented by No Vape Idaho, where we break down District 1 and 2 athletics week in, week out in the great state of Idaho. We are broadcasting live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. You can also listen to this podcast at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts. Let's bring on our North Idaho expert, Ryan Scaggs. What's up, Scaggs?
Not much, just thawing out a little bit after 5 rounds of snow removal yesterday.
Oh my gosh, dude, gnarly. I tuned into the local news 2 days ago, and one of the top stories was at Post Falls. I think it was one of the elementary schools, but the pipes burst and water flooded everywhere, and they had the little squeegee on the floor, and they were pushing all the water like into the library, into the carpeted library, and I was like, okay, that's one way to do it. I guess
they're gonna have to probably rip it out anyway. So
I guess might as well, right? If it's
so there was like Celtice Elementary in Post Falls. I think Greens Ferry Elementary in Post Falls had a pipe burst. Genesis Prep had a pipe burst. Coeur d'Alene High School, Lake City High School, Fernan Elementary, Lakeland High School. Like, I mean, there was so many schools that were like dealing with pipe issues the other day from that cold snap that we had. Hats off to the maintenance crews because holy smokes, they got their hands full.
Yeah. And then yesterday, we're recording this on Thursday, January 18th. Yesterday, of course, Coeur d'Alene schools called the snow day. They called it the night before. They said, nope, we're not even dealing with that.
Yeah, them in Lakeland, I think West Bonner, which is like Priest River, pulled the plug. Post Falls was like, we're going to find out. And then they ended up with a bus in the ditch in front of the high school.
That's what I was going to say. I tuned into the news last night, and I'm like, oh, Post Falls must have had school today because the school bus driver slid into the ditch.
Yeah, bless that driver's heart. But, man, I don't know how that happens. But, yeah, the bus was like high-centered in a swale.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There was only like 3 kids on board, and so they were all okay. So that's why we can laugh about it a little bit. Yeah. And then I was watching yesterday, of course, our news up here in North Idaho. It's mostly Spokane based, and we get a little, North Idaho stuff. But boy, Spokane made the decision yesterday to not run any of the plows all day long, and then finally at like 5:30 last night, they were like, oh, the city has just made this statement. We're going to run snow plows 24/7. Oh, just in time for the drive home traffic. Yeah, that's great. That's good management.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're still dealing with issues here in Coeur d'Alene. All the side streets haven't been done yet. And so if you're trying to get out of neighborhoods, it's a little touch and go unless you've got 4-wheel drive. But I mean, I had to help push the mailman out from in front of my house this morning. So,
no. Yeah, it's bad news for sure. Hey, we've got a comment, and if you're watching this live and you have a question or a comment or something you want to throw in the chat, go ahead and do it, and we'll throw it up on the screen. Travis Tyler up in Sandpoint says Sandpoint didn't have school yesterday, so that's good to know. And that's
districts in North Idaho, well, at least north of like Potlatch, canceled. So
yeah, for sure. And that's going to lead nicely into our first topic today here on the North Idaho Prepcast, wrestling, and specifically the River City Duels, because Jordan Tyler from Sandpoint went a perfect 6-0 at the River City Duels this past Saturday in Post Falls. We were worried a little bit about, how many teams are actually going to be able to come up and compete. We ended up with a really good field, Scaggs, and a really exciting finish.
Yeah, that championship duel was something special. That 1-point finish between Nampa finally clipping Post Falls, and Post Falls obviously isn't at full strength, and but that's still no fault of the Bulldogs that came up and took care of business in that final match, and it was exciting. I mean, it came down to the wire. It was an exciting showing. I mean, I was impressed with the way a lot of the teams showed up. Lakeland won their bracket, I think, which was a silver bracket. Lakeland got a nice victory there. St. Mary's did really, really well for a small school. They beat a couple actually fairly large Washington schools on the way to their I think they were in the bronze bracket finish. And then Sandpoint had a decent showing too, and Kellogg wrestled pretty well. So, I mean, there's the good showings all around from North Idaho teams that participated at the River City Duels.
Yeah, it was a really exciting time, and so congratulations to Nampa, who came up and got the title, and Post Falls had a great showing there as well. So speaking of post falls, you mentioned they're not at full strength, right? Ryder Seguin had suffered an injury a couple of weeks ago. Trey Smith now, who's a standout for post falls. Really unfortunate news, Ryan. His season is over, and a GoFundMe has been created to help with some of Trey's medical expenses, and they do a really nice job of explaining what happened. So I'm just going to read from that for a second to get me up to date. So basically, Raleigh Lane, right? Post Falls went down to the Raleigh Lane invite 2 weeks ago, and Trey developed an infection in his knee/leg. They took him to the hospital in Nampa. He was put on IV antibiotics. They released him with prescription antibiotics, and then instructions to follow up with his primary care physician back home in Post Falls. So Monday, they take him in and they take a look at his leg, and then they're like, you got to go to the hospital. Yeah. So you go to Valley Hospital, and then he gets transferred by ambulance to Sacred Heart Hospital. And you're going, well, geez, what's going on? This is pretty serious stuff. There was some infection still in that knee as it was healing up. And this has happened to me before where I
encountered this very issue. Like I've been through it. It's awful. It's scary too.
Yes. I had an infection in my leg, and then it healed up while there was still infection underneath. And so it was pretty gnarly. I basically have a hole in my shin now. Because of it. It's scary stuff for sure.
I got a hole probably the size of a golf ball in the front of my knee. Yeah, from the same thing. They had to cut out all this stuff like all the way to the bone. But
so essentially there was a lot of redness, there was a lot of swelling, inflammation within the muscles. They say the type of strep he got is the most aggressive strand, so they want to make sure and get it completely under control.
Yeah. Exactly what I had. It sucks, man. It is awful.
Yes. So essentially, he's now home recovering, but he's on pretty strict guidelines, can't push it too hard, and his season is over, which is really sad and unfortunate. But even though he is at home and now on the mend and recovering, those medical expenses still are pretty significant.
They're not cheap.
So a GoFundMe has been organized. I'm going to put the link just right here. And everyone you can type that into your browser and that'll take you to the GoFundMe fundraiser for Trey Smith. But it's a really good cause. And I hate to see this happen. I'm glad he's okay and recovering, because that's scary anytime you're talking about infection, especially around joints. But we wish him all the best.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like this type of infection is scary, because I encountered it my senior year in high school before graduation, and it moves so fast. That's the part that's so scary about it. And then the other things that come around it, like compartment syndrome and other things that you can, fall into the realm of, that you got to be careful and make sure that you're on your antibiotic regimen and everything else. Like there's a lot with that is scary, and you hear a lot of terms thrown out by doctors kind of giving you worst case scenarios. And so we just pray for him and hope that he's going to be healed up and on the mend and better sooner than later. But the expenses, that's the part where the community gets to rally around him and support families like this and in situations like that. And so that's our job, and we just hope his job's to heal up and to get better. Our job's to help take care of family. So we just worry about the family and we pray for him and his healing, and things will be good soon.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers are with Trey and his family, certainly. And again, it's the Ice Trey GoFundMe. The link is right there if you want to contribute or help out. So, and already, over $3,000 have been raised, which is incredible.
That's awesome.
And the not just from North Idaho. I've seen just a couple of people I know from like East Idaho wrestling community that have donated, which is just incredible to see. Yeah. Idaho wrestling is a big family,
Man, I'm telling you that there's a lot to that. You just nailed it on the head. It is a family, and you participate in wrestling in the state of Idaho. The people take care of their own, and that's pretty awesome to see.
Yep, for sure. All right, what were some of the other wrestling highlights that caught your eye? Non-River City duel.
I'll start with Sandpoint girls going over and winning the Hellgate tournament over in Montana. That was a pretty cool event, and a great showing by North Idaho wrestlers over there. The female wrestlers, girls wrestling in the state of Idaho is taking off like a rocket ship, and I don't think fans necessarily see how good it actually is, but the quality of wrestler and athlete that competes now in the state of Idaho, it's making a name for itself nationally. I know that we talk about it a lot on the Matt Chat Prepcast, but yeah, it's something of note. And kudos to the girls from Bonners Ferry, from Sandpoint, Moscow. There's girls all over the place now that are competing at a very high level within the state. We obviously, Alyssa Randalls was at Coeur d'Alene, and there's so many great athletes that they're finally getting their name on the map. With great showings even at Fargo and stuff like that too. It's pretty awesome to see. But then, in addition to that one, I would say Coeur d'Alene going and getting third at Rocky Mountain is a huge deal over at Sentinel High School in Missoula. That was a huge finish for the Vikes over there.
Yep. I thought you were going to say more, and I was getting ready to take a drink of coffee,
no,
and I'll table that.
I think they had 4 guys on the podium there, and that was just a huge showing. It was a great job by the Vikings to go over and in a very tough tournament and tough environment and get some wins.
Yep, for sure. It was a good showing for the Vikings heading over to Missoula Sentinel High School, home of the Spartans. I used to broadcast their games way back when I was first starting. Like I was 19 years old in radio, and I wasn't very good. Hey, I'm still not very good, but I was really bad back then. Okay, let's move on to basketball here, Scaggs. Fight for the Fish was last Friday. Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, the big showdown. It went the way we thought, I think. The Lake City girls pick up a 54-45 win. Coeur d'Alene boys pick up a 64-49 victory. Which performance was more impressive to you?
That's a tough question because I think Coeur d'Alene boys, I think we learned a little bit more about Lake City, that there is some youth that, they're going to take their lumps. They're not quite to that level yet. There's a lot of depth on that Coeur d'Alene boys team. I'm going to say the Lake City girls getting a win over Coeur d'Alene in the fashion that they did. I'm going to say that's the more impressive feat in my mind. That Lake City girls team, though, is awesome. I mean, they're a state title contender. So is Coeur d'Alene still in their own right. Like those two teams, I mean, wouldn't be surprised if one replaces the other in the state championship game this year. Or if they find ways onto the bracket and they end up on opposite ends, maybe they play in the title game. But there's that Lake City girls team is just absolutely loaded with talent, and I think it's kind of unsung, but I think people statewide are finally starting to take notice how good that T-Wolves team is, and how big that win at the beginning of the year was for them. That was a huge win, and it's translated into the regular season, and they've been able to pull off a nice string of victories.
Yeah, Avery Waddington leads the way with 23 points in the win for Lake City. She was 11 of 15 from the floor. She feasted inside, and I think last year, Maddie Simmons is able to shut that down a little bit for Coeur d'Alene. She, of course, has moved on, and I think the Vikings we know have really good guards and are strong. I think they're still trying to find that inside presence just a little bit, and because of that, Waddington was able to pretty much get what she wanted underneath.
Well, helps when you're like 6'5" or 6'4". So I mean, there's that benefit to it too. But you're right. I think if there's one thing that Coeur d'Alene's missing, it's that key piece inside in the middle. But their guard play is second to none. I mean, they're on the perimeter. They're lights out. I mean, you got the Colvins, and then you have, throw in Maddie Mitchell out there on the perimeter. Like that's 3 of the best guards in the state of Idaho right there on the perimeter. So. Coeur d'Alene's going to be okay, but they're going to have to solve that problem. I think, in the inside rebound game, get a little bit of inside outside. If you can get somebody that can get into the block can dish back around the perimeter, it's going to, I think that's probably how you play that, but I'm not no coach, and I'm not going to question Coach Simmons and how she does things, because she knows a lot more she's forgotten more basketball than I know. So I can't, prognosticate too much, but there's, both teams, I think, are very complete. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mentioned this on another Prepcast this week, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm saying, we kind of have to start exploring the possible storyline of, only one bid to state available from the Inland Empire League. Right now, Lake City has had the upper hand over Coeur d'Alene this season. And so you're looking at it, unless Coeur d'Alene can figure something out at districts, you're looking at the possibility of Coeur d'Alene having to fight their way in via a state play-in game. We talked about it 2 years ago, what a shame it was that Coeur d'Alene did not even have the chance to go to state and compete, right? Post Falls and Lake City both got there despite being a top 5 team. We could have a similar storyline this season where Coeur d'Alene could go from your 5A state champion to not even qualifying, which is just mind-boggling to me. But we'll talk more about this in state tournament expansion when we get to what happened at the IHSAA January meeting yesterday. So we'll table that discussion. But that would suck. That would be a bummer.
It would. And that just tells you the balance of power, like really statewide. Like there's a lot of girls teams out there that are very, very good. Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, Rigby, I would throw in the mix. Boise, we know about Owyhee. There's other teams out there that are all championship caliber teams.
Yep, for sure. Coeur d'Alene did rebound, and they beat Lewiston earlier this week. They played that game at the middle school, one of the middle schools in town, because of that pipe that burst at Coeur d'Alene High, which kind of would have been a cool atmosphere to take in a game.
I heard it was loud and raucous. It was over at Woodland Middle School, which was cool. And it takes a lot of those players back to their middle school playing days too, which is cool. It's kind of cool to go back to where you started and playing Lewiston at a middle school. That would be a loud, rowdy atmosphere and a ton of fun. But I didn't get a chance to go to the game, but it would have been a nice change of venue. But I know they did an article about it in the paper too, and they talked about how it was a nice, like, kind of neutral court feel for both teams. But they started interesting, but I guess they got onto a hot finish and ended up closing things out. So
and then on the flip side for Lake City, Waddington dominates inside against Coeur d'Alene. They beat Post Falls earlier this week. Macy Murphy what a freshman she is. She couldn't miss from the outside. I think she shot 5 of 7 or 4 of 6, something like that from beyond the arc. And then on the Coeur d'Alene boys side, in the fight for the Fish victory, same old. They played 11 guys. It was pretty good balance. Larson had 16 to lead the way, and then Logan Orchard had 15, but just good balance once again from the Coeur d'Alene boys. Hey, Sam Buffington's in the chat. Hey, Sam. I saw Sam on Saturday at North Idaho College. We were both there covering the Cardinals.
He messaged me and he just said Baney with a question mark. I was like, yeah, he's the PA guy this week.
third string. Basically the PA guy from Lakeland does all of the North Idaho College basketball games. And then when he's not available, Scaggs, you're kind of the backup. You're QB2. And then if you're not available and they get really desperate, they got to call me up. And then so I was there Saturday. I was playing
laser tag with some 8-year-olds. So yeah, that was birthday party.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Hey, Sam, howdy. Good seeing you Saturday. Yeah, it's good to see you too, Sam. Sam was at Fight for the Fish. So I was asking him, I said, hey, was it like, how rowdy was it? He goes, it was loud. it was loud for sure. So yes. Okay. Speaking of big rivalries, Scaggs, we've got one coming up this Friday. The battle for the paddle, Sandpoint and Lakeland. Travis,
I love this event, dude. I love the battle for the paddle. It is the coolest thing. If you haven't gone and you don't have anything going on Friday, go check this event out because they smack a wrestling meet in the middle of 2 basketball games. It is awesome. It is so cool.
Yeah, so they start with the girls' basketball game. Then when that's over, they put the wrestling mats down on the floor and everybody goes one-on-one, right? Duels between Lakeland and Sandpoint. And then once that's finished, they pick up the mats and they play the boys' basketball game. It's going to be at Lakeland this year, Travis says. So he wants to know, who do you think will win the paddle? Let's take it piece by piece here. Let's start with girls basketball. Sandpoint did beat Lakeland earlier this year. It was very close. Lakeland had the lead with 2 minutes to go and almost a double-digit lead, and Sandpoint came back and rallied and won. They did just beat Moscow in a tight game earlier this week as well. But what do you think about this girls basketball matchup?
I'm going to go in the girls basketball matchup since I'm not calling the game, and I don't want to aggravate. I think it's going to be another close game, but I think Coach Love, the dude is a genius. He's going to figure something out with his lineup, and he's going to pull a rabbit out of his hat, and they'll get the girls' victory. You want me to prognosticate the rest? Because I think Lakeland's going to win the wrestling duel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll take
Travis doesn't want to hear that, but
yeah, sorry, Travis, but I'm going to take the Hawks on the mat. And then in the boys' basketball, that's going to be a good game. I mean, the boys' basketball games always tend to be pretty good affair. I'm going to say OT, and it's going to be Lakeland in OT.
Okay. I actually kind of agree with you on all of your picks. I kind of lean Lakeland. I don't know about the wrestling.
The paddle overall, I think goes to the Hawks. It's home
Yeah.
court advantage. Home court advantage. It'll be
Travis,
close on the mat. Yeah.
yeah. Travis says it'll be close. And that's the coin flip to me. I think whoever, because I think Sandpoint wins the girls' game. I think Lakeland wins the boys' game. Whoever can get it done on the mat is going to win the paddle.
I'm telling you what, they turn the lights out and the glow sticks are going and stuff too. It's a cool thing. It is rad. It's super fun.
Yeah, for sure. All right. A couple more basketball developments to check on here, Scaggs. Let's go to the 2A ranks. We've got a pretty cool video clip here. Priest River was playing Timberlake on Tuesday night, and this was a wild finish. Essentially, Priest River was down by 2 with like inside of 5 seconds to play. Timberlake was at the line shooting a free throw. And then this happened. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. This is on our Idaho Sports Instagram account, but check out what happened here. So here's, Timberlake. They missed the free throw. Priest River gets it up the floor.
Their chat window's kind of in the way. That's awesome.
What a wild shot. Palmer Coleman for the win from about 35 feet out, and that hit the rim a couple of times.
Pushes up the floor. A heave. Hits every side of the rim and go. That's huge. That's awesome. I love this one right here, where the kid on the bottom, look at him run to the sideline here. Hey, good game.
Yes, amongst all of the chaos, yes, the good sportsmanship being shown there by Priest River as well to shake hands with the Timberlake squad that had just experienced the agony of defeat there. It was a pretty cool it's a pretty cool highlight, man.
That's a big win for Priest River, though. That's a big win for them. Congrats on the victory. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was Carson Hughes from Priest River who was going over to shake hands after amongst all the celebration. So it's a non-conference game, right, for Priest River, but does this give them some momentum now going into the heart of conference play in this 2A Central Idaho League?
Who wants to win this conference right now? I mean, like, really, if you look at the standings and the way it's kind of stacked up, it's a log jam in there. Maybe it does. I mean, if they show that they can play with a 3A team that's shown that they've played close in games with some really good teams this year. So yeah, I mean, if it gives Priest River a shot in the arm, I mean, it's a puncher's chance. The league schedule's kind of wide open, and it's obviously I think it's just going to be a one bid conference this year. So I don't necessarily think I mean, it sounds terrible, like sandbagging on our own region, but I don't know if one of these teams ends up winning a play-in game or not. But yeah, so the district tournament's gonna be pretty telling, obviously, but it's gonna be anybody's ball game between, St. Mary's is always there and the perennial kind of king of the hill, but does Kellogg dethrone things this year? Does Grangeville throw their hat in the ring? I mean, then you had throwing Priest River and Orfino too, and it's just a kind of a jumbled mess, I guess you could say.
So the current standings are St. Mary's at 2-0 in league, Grangeville at 2-1. St. Mary's just beat Grangeville over the weekend. It was a huge win for the Lumberjacks. Orofino's 2-2. Kellogg is 1-2. Priest River is 1-3. But Priest River has gotten significantly better. They lost to Kellogg by almost 30 early on in December. They lost to Orofino by 9. But since then, since the new year, they've been playing pretty well. They lost to St. Mary's by only 11. They defeated Orofino by 2. And then they only lost to Sandpoint, a 4A school, by 9. And now they just picked up this win with Timberlake. The big game coming up in Priest River on Saturday, Grangeville comes to town. And if Priest River wants to start punching up the standings here, this is their chance. Here's Max Oswald from the Bonner County Daily Bee. Despite their record, Priest River's pretty sneaky. 11 of 19 from 3 against Sandpoint last week in that 9-point loss.
That's not bad. I mean, you're shooting 11 from 19 from 3. You're beyond the arc. You're going to be in a lot of ball games. Absolutely. Yeah, they're a sneaky team. And yeah, that conference is at 2A. You don't have anybody that's necessarily standing out as world beaters, but I mean, I don't ever count out Coach Chase and what he's able to do down the road in St. Mary's, but there's who wants to be the new king? I mean, I think it's the open year right now that anybody can step in and take that mantle and run with it. So, Priest River gets on a heater. That don't surprise if they're, seated at the district tournament.
St. Mary's has always had that guy. They're always a collective team unit. They're kind of like Coeur d'Alene. They play 11, 10 guys a game. And they have always had that guy that they can look at and go, we need a bucket, right?
Yeah.
Apparently it stayed a couple years ago. It was Colby Renner. He was option 4 out of 4, but
you got like Grayson Sands, you got Renner, like you've got, Tristan Gentry. They've had a number of dudes. Yeah.
Eli Gibson. This year, it's kind of been Seth Swallows a little bit, but it is more of a, the sum of its parts is greater than the individual. And so it's been a team effort this year. It's not the level of dominance we've seen from St. Mary's. And so the door is open a little bit. I had a couple of coaches in the preseason tell me for our season preview of this league that Priest River would have been the overwhelming favorite had Tyler Engelson stayed at Priest River. He transferred to Timberlake instead, and he is a dynamic point guard. So for Priest River, I'm sure it felt extra great to get the win over Timberlake.
It's like, oh, you left us. Go home with an L. Here you go. But no, that was a great game though. But
I was told Priest River would have been the favorite in the league had Engelson stayed. And so you can see it right there with the talent of Priest River. It's going to be a really interesting race down the stretch.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on it as things go down the stretch and heat up during the month of January.
Yep. All right. Mea culpa time. Are you ready, Scaggs?
Yeah.
Public apology tour. Last week, we started talking about Case Why Not from Lapway and his chase for Idaho's all-time scoring record. And we said he was close. And we made a big deal about it. And we said IdahoSports.com is going to be there covering the games. We're going to try and get the historic moment so everybody can watch it for free on IdahoSports.com. And we had said that the career mark was held by Jared Mercer from Kamei with a total of 2,536 points. Unfortunately, his career total ended up being 2,589. So that's a difference of 53 points. Seems insignificant, when you're talking about 2,300 plus points in a career, but it is. And we got it wrong. And I feel really dumb and stupid about that, to be honest.
Well, in your defense though, Case didn't get there yet. So we didn't crown a new champion that wasn't necessarily a champion yet. But that mistakes happen. It's okay. I think everybody will forgive you because they got to see some free basketball of some really good basketball games. So
So here's where we're at with it. Case is now 70. Let me do the math here really quickly. Case he's now got 525 points this year in 15 games. He is now 74 points shy of the all-time record. Case has 2,516. Jared Mercer has 2,589 points. That's where we stand. The info I had grabbed was from IdahoHoops.com, and they're a great resource, right? They've got a lot of good historical information, but the question I kept having in the back of my head was, why isn't there some sort of official source or official record book that we can rely upon? Because this guy's got one list and this person's got a different point total. We finally confirmed with Kamei High School the correct amount of total points. But that was my question. Why isn't there some sort of official record book? I'm from Montana, and Montana's got a record book that is dope. It is awesome. The Montana High School Activities Association put it together in conjunction with the schools. And so kind of like a light bulb moment for me, Ryan. I feel like this is really my big purpose now is to make one. IdahoSports.com is going to be working on an official record book, something that the fans can go to and know that, hey, this is a trusted source, and we know that these totals are accurate. We're going to have to work in cooperation with all of the schools, and it's going to take a long time to put it together. But I feel like this is something that's too important to not have in the state of Idaho.
Well, absolutely. And you said it yourself, the other states do it. And I don't want to say it's a knock on Idaho or anything necessarily, but for a long time, like sports weren't really there wasn't the agreement like with the IHSA in place until what, like the late 70s. Mistake me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was just kind of an open agreement. Like the state championship wasn't even sanctioned with IHSAA until the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, for football and some other sports, I think basketball they've always had kind of a state tournament. But
so I mean, regardless, though, is that I'm sure that there would be plenty of people that would be on board with helping undertake this massive undertaking, but it's something that needs to happen. I mean, like the kids need, like I've always said, like the kids are now, some of the kids are adults, but it's the kids deserve the recognition. If there's something that's noteworthy of taking place, it needs to be in a record book somewhere so somebody can reference it later on. And that's a big deal because you want to recognize, especially the hard work that's been done, whether it's Jared Mercer, if it's Case, why not? Like, that's something that you want to know. And the future kids will want to know too, because you never know. We have a kid that wants to beat Case's record that's playing in 7th grade basketball right now watching the Prepcast. So,
right. Yeah. And we kind of had the top 10 on the leaderboard, and we had slided Titus here out, who's number 8 all time in scoring 2,034 points. So Lapway's got 2 guys that played together in the top 10 of this list, which is just incredible to think about. So
that tells you how good those teams were.
That's ridiculously good for sure. So anyways, I feel really bad that we made that error, but we'll still be there every step of the way as Case continues to chase this down. And I really do think that this is going to sound dumb, but I feel like this was my calling now, this like to try and put together this record book and get this done. It's a really important project, and I'm like really excited about it. So Case is 74 points away. They play Friday at Genesee, Tuesday at home against Clearwater Valley, and then next Saturday at Logos. It's going to be probably in that 3-game window somewhere. And we will try to be there broadcasting when the moment happens.
Yeah. I mean, he went off for 56 against Logos the last time, so it could be against Clearwater Valley. You never know. But I know the team's been clamping down on him a little bit, but they still, Lapway's on a nice little run of their own. So we'll talk more about that in the North Idaho 9. But yeah, it's an accomplishment. Kudos to you for having the humility of recognizing it, and you're like admitting when you're wrong about something. That not a lot of people do that. You didn't double down. So
more important than me being right is or looking smart is being right. Like you have to. I mean, this is something that's not to get too political with things, but this is afflicting our country. People can't admit when they were wrong or made mistakes, and they dig their heels in. And anyway, so yes, we will continue to monitor Case. Why not? As he chases down this incredible all-time scoring record for sure. All right, we are going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors from No Vape Idaho. And when we come back, we'll talk about the IHSAA's January meeting. They held it yesterday. Some big things were discussed, some specific to North Idaho. So we'll run it all down for you right after this. It's the North Idaho Prepcast presented by No Vape Idaho on IdahoSports.com.
It's not like I'm doing drugs.
Nicotine can negatively impact the developing brain and make it more susceptible to other addictive substances. Students that vape are 3 times more likely to start smoking weed. And kids who share vapes can unknowingly inhale other drugs like THC, meth, or fentanyl, causing permanent lung damage, overdose, and even death. Be smart, don't start.
This is the North Idaho Prepcast presented by No Vape Idaho. Scaggs, did you know that studies have shown, they've done the research on this, the more you vape, the more depressed you actually get. This happens with a lot of substances that get abused, but we think it's going to lift us up, and instead it's dragging us straight to nowhere.
Yeah. No, that's, part of the drug that, the chemical that is in vape cartridges is the known depressant or stimulant. So it's like, hey, that makes sense. And the other things that you get from vaping too, like popcorn lung and stuff like that, like there's a lot of things that can take place from vaping that are just absolutely awful for you, and it's not a good alternative to smoking. Let's put it that way. Don't do either of them.
Yeah, just stay away from all of it, honestly. Yep. If you want more tips and facts about how to stay vape free, you can type in No Vape Idaho. That's no with a K, like the more you know. Watch, we're going to get sued by NBC now. The more you know, No Vape Idaho. You could type that into your favorite search browser and go from there. So
just no stars going across the screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Do. All right. No Vape Idaho sponsoring the North Idaho Prepcast here. Yesterday, Scaggs, the Idaho High School Activities Association, held their January meeting. Some big things were discussed. First of all, we have a new executive director starting in July. Longtime executive director Ty Jones announced he was retiring at the end of June. And yesterday, his replacement was selected by the board. It's current board member and current Shelley superintendent, Chad Williams.
Awesome. Congratulations, Chad. So, yeah, no, that's there was a lot of stuff that came down at that meeting yesterday, and that's awesome. We got a new leadership coming up, stepping in June to take over the reins of what is going to show to be probably a pretty difficult job in the next few seasons to come, just with all the changes that are taking place within the state of Idaho.
Yeah. So Chad Williams from Shelley, the new executive director starting July 1st. Congratulations are in order there. The other big topic that was discussed was state tournament expansion. Is it happening? The answer is
maybe.
Maybe, but we got to talk about a lot of stuff.
We need to talk about it more. That's the answer. Yeah.
I'm just glad they're having the conversation because it's got to start somewhere. The big concern that was voiced by a lot of people at the meeting was travel, right? Well, we don't want to send a team from North Idaho all the way to East Idaho or vice versa. And I guess here's my solution to that is if you plan it out ahead of time, schools can plan that in. You know, we already rotate sites for football championships, right? Sometimes it's in the north, sometimes it's in Boise, sometimes it's in East Idaho. Why couldn't we just rotate the batch of expanded state tournament play-in games every year? Hey, we know that this year it's going to be in North Idaho and we'll plan accordingly. The next year it's going to be in Boise and we'll plan accordingly. I don't know. I feel like that's
why don't we have designated schools even that, you know, there's a nice little thing called maps. We can bust those out and you can find an equidistant point between the two locations that have been approved by the IHSAA to be a neutral site for a play-in game. And, you know, that's certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but I know that I don't want to sound too cynical about it, but yeah, or like the rotating. I mean, we deal with it in football. We deal with it in other sports. I don't understand why basketball is immune to that other than winter travel. I know that there's a lot of worry about that, but at the end of the day, like we're sending the eventual state champion to Hagerman for a state semifinal game when they're the number one team in the state of Idaho. We have a team that goes from I think it was Camas County last year in the football playoffs, not in 23 or in 22. They put in it was like 2,200 miles of travel in just the playoffs. So we want to talk about travel being an issue. Let's make travel an issue. Like then like have it be level across the board if it's really an issue.
Right. I think this is a hurdle that's going to be pretty easy to clear. I think.
Absolutely.
I always relay the story of Grangeville football. This was 2 or 3 years ago now. Jeff Adams, the coach at Grangeville, he's a funny guy. He's really funny. I was talking to him. They were playing Westside in the quarterfinals, and they were the number 8 seed, and I think Westside was the number 1 seed. It was the first year they used Max Prep's seeding. And I'm talking to him before the game because I was broadcasting it for IdahoSports.com, and he said, basically this Westside team is like historically great. On the 5% chance we pull this thing off today, like, I don't know if we're going to have enough money to turn around and come back down here next week. If Grangeville had won, they would have had to have traveled to Bear Lake in the semifinals, which is like also in Southeast Idaho. And he's like, we don't have the money for that. We tapped our budget just coming down for this game. So again, if we travel for football all the time, I feel like we could build in a rotation where, hey, the North Idaho schools don't have to travel as much every 3 years, or the East Idaho schools don't have to travel as much every 3 years.
As a business owner, I don't want to say involve corporate money too much, but other states do it where they bring in corporate sponsorships that helps level some of the travel costs. I know it happens in other states because there's a neighboring state, 13 miles away from us that allows money to be distributed for travel. It doesn't pay for all of it, but each team that makes it into the playoffs gets an allotment for some. That maybe eases the burden a little bit. There's ways around that there's Idaho companies that would probably be willing to support something if travel really is an issue, for school that like can't afford to make a playoff game in order to make the playoff game happen. There's businesses in the state of Idaho that would probably help with that. But I know I'm getting way ahead of things on that line of thinking, but it's tough to hear some of these arguments that are so easily surmountable, like be placed on an argument that probably if we just stopped and talked about it and looked at it, it's like, okay, let's just not make this an issue. Let's take travel off the board. Doesn't make sense. Like, can we just have that level-headed conversation?
Also recently in December, the IHSAA renewed their contract with the NFHS network for another 10 years, Ryan. I'd be curious to know how much money they're getting for that, and maybe some of that could be applied to alleviate some of these travel concerns as well. But yeah, a 10-year contract with the NFHS network. I mean,
when was that signed?
In December.
Oh, in December. Okay.
Yep. Basically, they had already
new director's signature on it.
No, previous director. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still running things until end of June. But anyways, you're getting some money from that, and I don't know. Maybe.
But like I said, like the corporate sponsorship arena is something that is pretty easily. I mean, we could bring in Logan to have that conversation. Like our sales guy that, like when things need to be done, and there's people willing to step in.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, let's wrap up here with before I say something that I'll regret. Let's go to Court of Christ Academy.
This is awesome. All right, yes. This was the one that stood out to me. It was Court of Christ Academy gets to play IHSA sports starting next year, right?
Yes. This is a cool deal. They are a school that started 2 years ago, right? They opened, I think it was 2 years ago in Coeur d'Alene. Court of Christ Academy, a private Christian school. Their athletic director is actually former Oregon Ducks and LA Rams quarterback Kellen Clemens, which is kind of cool. But they will be joining the IHSAA starting in the 24-25 school year. So that's next year. They will be in 1A. I'm not sure if it's going to be D1 or D2 yet. We got to look at their enrollment numbers. But they plan on competing in.
Well, if they're 1A next year, they're just 1A, right?
That's right. Yeah. You're right. I'm still thinking about the old. Yeah. So they will be 1A, the smallest classification. Ryan, they plan on competing in the standards we see from a new school, right? Boys and girls basketball and volleyball. But how about this? Football. They're going to compete in football.
Yes, let's go. Is Kellen going to be the coach? Because I'm immediately giving them a slight edge. But
right.
Let's go. Yeah, anytime you hear football being added, you got my antennas are going off. That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure we mentioned this, but the Mullen St. Regis co-op is going to continue next year, but they're going to compete in Montana. So in theory, the North Star League loses Mullen St. Regis and they add Court of Christ. So
that's awesome. And that's cool for 8-man football in the state of Idaho, adding another school and program. And I know that, and it's no knock to the issues with enrollment and participation numbers at Kootenai, but if they can get things turned around and right the ship there and being able to compete, like that's getting a full league, that's a big deal for those other schools in that conference. So, hats off and kudos to Clemens and, getting that off the ground, and thanks to the board and the superintendents voting on allowing that. I think it was unanimous 13-0 that they got acceptance into the IHSAA, and, let's go. Let's add another team. We get another team to talk about up here in North Idaho.
Love it for sure. Looks like we got a chat in the comment here. Hey, Max Oswald again from the Bonner County Daily. He does such a great job. We talked about this last week, but we're very spoiled up here with our North Idaho.
Max is just going to join the show permanently, like replace me.
I know. Right. He said, that's great news. Speaking of small schools, shout out to Clark Fork boys basketball who beat Mullen 74-16 on Tuesday. They have 6 seniors on the team this
So
year.
I wasn't going to say it, but like this is a dark horse pick in that conference. So we can't go with conference picks yet, but that Clark Fork boys team in that conference there's some danger lurking there.
Yeah, I was going to look up really quickly. I think the league this year gets a half bid. Let me double check that real quick. Where I think Clark Fork I think we can say they're kind of the overwhelming favorite because it's them, Mullen, and Kootenai. By the way, shout out to Kootenai. They broke a 3-year losing streak. They hadn't won since 2019. They got a win last week. Way to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And we talked about, I mean, I mentioned with the struggles with participation numbers and everything else there, but that's no knock on the kids. That's just something that it's something they have to surmount with, the community around Harrison, and there's growth taking place out there even. So the more participants that they get and kids coming in, I hope to see that that's just one of many to come for that program. I hope that's one win that they continue to get more.
Yeah, so unfortunately this year, the district only gets a half bid. So Clark Fork, if they win the district championship, they still would have to earn their spot at state via a state play-in game. This happened in volleyball where the Wampus Cats had to travel all the way down to Fruitland to play a play-in match. They fell short in that. They would have to play the third place team from East Idaho, District 5-6, and that league is a mess right now.
Yeah.
That could be Rockland, it could be Water Springs, it could be North Gem, who knows.
But it's also an opportunity with 6 seniors on the team. That could be a win. So that's a big deal. I count play-in games as a state tournament victory. So
right.
If people look at it as more of a district tournament, that's a state tournament win. It's like winning in the opening round of the NCAA tournament.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the first 4 wins still count as a tournament win, right?
That's true.
Yeah. No, I look at that team. That could be a good special group for Clark Fork.
They would have to travel to Cascade to play that game. So that state play-in game. So we'll keep an eye on the Wampus Cats. But yes, they've got a special group of seniors, the San Romans, Ethan Howard, etc. Really good group of kids there at Clark Fork for sure. All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the North Idaho Prepcast. If you want the full recap of everything that was discussed at the IHSA meeting, you can find that on the homepage at IdahoSports.com, along with all the latest scores, schedules, statistics, and whatnot. Oh, okay.
I'll put the North Idaho 9 on my Twitter page if we're not going to do it today. That's totally fine.
Yeah. I totally forgot about that. Okay. Quickly, we will get through that. One last thing. Hoyt and Brock want to know, did we get a chance to talk about the Clearwater Classic? We did not. It's the most true North Idaho tournament featuring mostly all North Idaho schools. This is happening this weekend. Clearwater Classic wrestling competition in Lewiston. This should be
Hoyt will join me in this one of remembering it went from being at Booth Hall to a few years it was held at the Nez Perce County Fairgrounds. Then it went to Lewis Clark State College. And then now it's back at Lewiston High School, and Lewiston's phenomenal facility they've got. That's a fun tournament. That is a good tournament. That used to be one of the biggest tournaments in the Northwest for a while. And they're doing a great job turning things around and getting some great teams to show up for that event. That'll be a good tournament this weekend. Absolutely.
They said Scaggs might have even wrestled at that one. Did you ever compete at the Clearwater Classic?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. How'd it go?
Not well.
All right. Well,
that would have been, I think I wrestled when I was a freshman. I got a second entry on varsity that year. Is at 160 pounds as a freshman. That were rough days. Yeah, those were rough days.
That's all right. No rough days for these teams. It's your North Idaho 9 boys and girls basketball here. These are your personal rankings of the 9 best teams in North Idaho, regardless of classification. We'll put them up on the screen, but for those that are listening, audio only, run through them. Let's start with the boys. Here's your North Idaho 9.
So at number 1, obviously, Coeur d'Alene. Not much change in this one, actually. Lapway at 2, Bonners Ferry 3. We just know those 3 teams are dangerous. Post Falls is sneaking in there at 4. Post Falls is making an appearance, getting votes in the coaches poll, which is good to see. That Trojans team is deadly. I've been banging the drum for that team for a while, and don't be surprised. They got a nice showdown with Coeur d'Alene coming up. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Lakeside at 5, Potlatch 6. Those two teams, I mean, neck and neck, in my opinion. Those are both two really, really solid groups. Lewiston at 7, Lake City 8. Kendrick rounds it out at 9. That's what I got on the boys' side.
And your North Idaho 9 for girls basketball.
Only one change in this lineup this week. Everybody from 1 through 8 is the same. Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, Sandpoint, Grangeville, Timberlake, Kendrick at 6, Lapway 7, Kamei 8. And sneaking in this week is Prairie in the 9 spot.
Prairie has entered the chat.
Yes, Prairie has entered the chat and looking to make some noise in White Pine League play. That team is young, but man, they can play. They can play hard.
Yep, no doubt about it. So, again, Scaggs also puts his North Idaho 9 on his Twitter account at @NIdaho Game Night. You can always follow him there as well. All right, now, thank you for tuning in for the North Idaho Prepcast. Enjoy the competitions this weekend, everybody. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll catch you next time on IdahoSports.com.